Don't put a sock in your stock. Put stock in your stew. Today on Let's Cook. Hi, welcome to Let's Cook, where our theme today is stock and stew. So we're making stock and we're making stew. Actually, let me just go over the menu. We're making a brown veal stock, and then we are making a beef stew with potato dumplings. Now, the first thing we're going to do is make stock, so let me just give you a definition of what stock actually is. And I define this all the time for my students. It's a clear, nutritional, flavorful liquid derived from bones, meat, vegetables, and seasonings. Those are the ingredients in stock. So we're going to start the brown stock right now. Now right here, I have the bones that you can use to make stock. You can use beef bones or veal bones. I have some beef bones here, but I also have some veal bones here because that's going to give me a balance. And what I do with these bones is I brown them so that they look like this, where we just roast them in the oven. That roasting really creates a lot of flavor. When you go to the market, you can buy marrow bones and use those. And also, if they have oxtails, put 1 or 2 oxtails in there. Very good. That's the bone portion of the stock. Now we need bones, meat. Meat is on the bones. That gets browned up. You need that protein, but you really need the gelatin from the bones to extract that. First thing I'm going to do to make this stock now is I need to get those vegetables. That's the other ingredient, the vegetables. So what I'll do is I'll take a saucepan right here, a stock pot right here. I'm actually using a shallower pan than I would. This is normally the pan I would use, a stock pot like this to make this stock. But I'm going to brown the mirepoix in the pan here as opposed to the oven. I could have, if I wanted to, taken the vegetables and browned them in the oven with the bones, but I'm just going to do them right here. So I heat my pan nice and hot, put a little bit of oil in here. I'm going to start with some onions, carrots, celery, parsnips, and leeks. Now what that actually is, this is mirepoix. Mirepoix meaning vegetables just for flavoring. So I take this and I just let these brown up. Along with my vegetables right now, I can also add a little tomato product in here. This is where a balance is going to come. So we put some tomato product in here as well. Let that tomato product brown. Now, if you'd like, you could use a tomato paste, you could use tomato puree, or you could use fresh tomatoes. Anything will work as long as it gives it that acid flavor. Okay, so we let that brown up. I can now take my bones. I can put my bones into this as well. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually take the bones and I'm going to put them in a stock pot because this is all going to go right into the stock pot right here. So I'll start with my bones right here. This stock has to cook for a minimum of 6 hours, more like 8 if you could get it overnight and you're comfortable with that in your home. Go ahead and do it overnight and simmer, because the slower it simmers, the better it is. So, get my bones in here. And again, the roasting of the bones is extremely important. And if you'd like, what you can also do when you're roasting the bones, if you'd like to oil them, you can go ahead and oil those bones as well, and that'll work. Okay, so now, I'm going to look at the bottom of the pan here. See the caramelization I have going on in the bottom of the pan with the vegetables? Very important that we get that nice and caramelized. Now here is where I'm going to take, and you don't have to do this. You could use wine. I'm going to use a little brandy. I'm going to add a little bit of brandy to the pan here. Okay. And I'm going to light this on fire. I'm just building a little bit of flavor in my stock here with the brandy. So now we have this going on. This is beautiful. Okay, good. Now, we let that cook out a little bit, and in a perfect situation, if I had a few more than 3 minutes, I'd let it cook out longer. But see, we're just going to cook that alcohol off. Now, I'm going to take this, put my pan right here. This all goes in my stock pot right here, so I'm going to get that all right in there. Along with that now, I'm going to add my water. Now the water, I need enough water to really cover my bones. So, and I'm going to make sure that the water is really good water, which means that if I need to use bottled water, if I have highly treated water, I would not use that. Now here is the kick. We bring this up to a simmer, and we just let this simmer. Once it comes up to a simmer, see the fat that I have right in here right now? I would take this fat right now, and I would just scum away any of the excess fat that's coming to the surface now, and also any foam that's going to come to the surface. After I've scummed away that fat, I add my seasonings. I have some peppercorns here, bay leaf, sprig of thyme, and you can put a clove in there, a clove of garlic as well, parsley stems too. These go in. As I said, you're going to simmer this minimum of 6. 8 is good. Overnight is great. I have one over here that has been simmering for a while. And I just want to show you the great color that you get in this, and also what you have to do when you're scumming it. See this right here? See all these impurities that come to the surface? I would keep adding water and scumming these away. Now there's a way to get the impurities to go to one side, and what it is, it's called a half boil, which means you take your pot and I bring it over this way a little bit so it's only simmering on one side of the pot. When that occurs, all of the excess fat and impurities will come to this side of the pot, and they're easier to remove. Another thing, when you're scumming impurities and you put your ladle in the pot, don't tilt your ladle down on an angle like this because you take out too much liquid. Keep it level, force those impurities to the side of the pot, and just have them run over into your ladle. The first half of the cooking time, you're extracting the flavor of the bones. The second half of the cooking time, that's when you're getting the gelatin out. That's the most important. And I'll just show you how beautiful this stock looks, because I'm going to start to strain it here, and you can just see here how nice and clear and beautiful, and the color that we get just by properly browning those bones. Isn't that beautiful? Now I have a beautiful brown stock, brown veal stock, that I can use to make my beef stew. We're going to take a little break, but then when we come back, I'm going to make some potato dumplings that are the topper for our stew today. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Let's Cook, where we are making stock and stew. Now we have our brown veal stock going here, and we're going to be making stew, but first thing I need to do is make my potato dumplings. So to make the potato dumplings, I have some cooked potatoes right here, and all I did was I cooked them in some salted water. I'm going to now take these potatoes, shut this off here, and we're just going to drain these off right in here. So I'll just drain those potatoes off. Now, while these potatoes are still wet, I'm just going to take and I'm going to rice them. This is a ricer. This is a ricer. And what the ricer does is the ricer allows you to puree the potatoes without beating them too much and pulling out too much of the starch. So I'll just take my spoon here, and I'm just going to, I'll see which ricer I like better. That's a good thing about having a cooking show, you know. You can get like different tools, and you can just try the different things that you like. So I'll just take, I kind of like this one here, but I'll show you the difference. See this one here? This one falls in a bowl. However, your more ergonomically, aesthetically pleasing looking ricer sits on top of the bowl. So it's really your choice. See the difference? One falls in, one doesn't. Both require two hands to work with. So let's get our potatoes right in here. We're going to puree them. While I have my potatoes pureeing in there, I'm going to actually put my butter. Actually, I need to melt this butter. This butter's out of the refrigerator. It's a little too cold. So let me just get a saute pan here. And I'm going to melt this butter because we need to melt that butter. The butter's got to be melted. If the potatoes were a little hotter, or if the butter wasn't so cold out of the refrigerator, then I would have no problem at all just putting it in the potatoes to melt the butter. So I got my potatoes here, and this is, you know, you have to pretend almost like you're making mashed potatoes, because essentially we are, and then we're adding egg. Or if I wanted to be classic, this would be what we would call an appelé duchesse, which means dry mixture of potatoes. So we're doing the stew, now we're doing our potatoes. So here, I pureed my potatoes here nicely. Good to go. That's all I have to do is rice them once. Put this out of the way now. Just get that out of the way. I have some eggs here, so I'm going to take my eggs. Make sure your potatoes aren't too hot, and mine aren't too hot, that the egg would cook in there. So I'll just add my egg to this. Along with the egg, have some parsley here. I'll just put in some parsley here. I have a little bit of salt, even though the potatoes were cooked in salted water. We add a little bit of pepper here. Just a little bit more now. We add nutmeg. You can buy nutmeg like that. You know, you can buy already the ground nutmeg here, but I have to show you this because this is so cute. I have my little grater here. And on the side here, isn't this adorable? So look, I can just grate it right here. So let me just bring it over to the bowl over here. Grate a little bit of fresh nutmeg into the potatoes. Now, why do we use nutmeg? Nutmeg actually balances the earthy flavor of the potatoes. We'll add our butter to that. Now I'll mix this. There's one ingredient I have not put in here, and that has to be the flour. Reason being, potatoes always work a little differently. So when I add the flour, I add a little bit at a time. So I'll just take my flour here, a little bit. I'll incorporate that. I'll see how they tighten up. See how they're tightening up a little bit? A little bit more flour. Good. There we go. This looks like it's just going to be just about right. Where, when I pick it up with a spoon, I'll show you what it looks like here. Looks like mashed potatoes, doesn't it? But it's a little tighter. But when I pick this up with a spoon, it's really going to just stay right on the spoon there, almost falling off like now. Good. Now, this is going to give me a nice, light potato dumpling for my stew, which is kind of my segue to say we need to take a little break, and then when we come back, we're going to make our stew, but I need to let my dumplings firm up just a little bit in the refrigerator. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Let's Cook, where we are doing stock and stew, but now it's time to make the stew. Now, stew is a braised item, so we usually use a cut of meat where it's somewhat tough or chewy, so it's usually from the chuck or the rear end of the animal. I'm using chuck because I like chuck for the flavor. So I have a chuck steak right here. This is what it looks like right here, okay? And you can see the marbling. You can see there's a lot of connective tissue. So I took this chuck steak and then I went into the supermarket and I found where they had diced chuck, which is that meat that's already diced like this, that they said was for stewing. Now, if I look at the size of this meat, and these chunks, and I say, well, you know what? This is just a little bigger than what I really want. So what I usually do is I'll take it and I'll dice it down into smaller pieces here so that it's just a little bit more bite size. But the chuck has the best flavor. Now, to make this stew, what I'm going to do right now is I've heated my pan here a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit of oil into the pan. Then, let me just move this out of the way here. I'm just going to take my meat right here and season it. Now, the meat should be at room temperature. Don't want it too cold. You need to season it well with salt and pepper. Then we drop it in the pan. Now, when you drop it in the pan, you're going to see that I just have enough surface on the bottom of the pan here for the meat to really sit by itself and nicely brown up. So and I'll just leave the meat alone, just like this. Let that meat really brown up. I won't move it at all because it really needs to brown. And one of my favorite memories and this was when I used to come home and my father would be making stew. And my father made great stews. And you would walk into the house and I could smell the beef being seared with the onion and the pepper that would be in the air, and it was just out of this world. And you can see right here how quickly this really starts to sear. So now my meat is starting to brown. once my meat starts to brown like this, I have a very good brown stock, so now I can start to have my vegetables. I'll put in some pearl onions. I have some celery, carrots, and turnips here. They can also all go in. Along with that, I have some mushrooms, so I'll add my mushrooms to this too. Now, I do need a little bit of a thickening agent. So before I brown these vegetables or they sweat out too much liquid, I'm going to add just a little flour to this. So we'll just sprinkle a little flour right in here, just like this. And we'll stir this around just until that flour gets absorbed. Now remember, or if you're just joining the show, we made brown stock before. Now, our brown stock had terrific color. So I don't really have to brown this flour because my stock, I made a great stock, that has a color. So now all I do is I'm going to take this stock here, start to add it to my stew. I'm going to add enough stock so that the vegetables and the meat are just covered. Here we go. Once I have the stock in there, I can't leave this. I have to kind of stay with it and simply stir this around until it comes up to a simmer. It's not going to be as thick as I want it to be because it has to simmer and reduce down to get the right consistency. After a while, this is what it ends up looking like, where it's simmered. And I'm just going to come over here, remove some of the impurities that are on the surface here, and you can see how nice and rich this looks right here. See how nice and rich this is. Have great color, nice consistency. Now, this is going to simmer. This is simmered for about an hour and a half. Simmered, not boiled, because if it boiled, the vegetables would be overdone. I have my dough for my potato dumplings right here. Now I'm going to make the dumplings on top of the stew. It is also going to add a little bit more body to the stew. So to make the dumplings, I take my potato mixture and I shape it almost like a quenelle shape and just drop it in. I have water on the side here because as I shape them this way and drop them in, the water allows the potatoes to leave the spoon. So we're just going to come over here to kind of scrape this off and drop them in. If you don't want to do that, then you might say, Paul, I don't want a quenelle shape. You can just go like this and drop it in. Just wet the spoon every time before you're done to drop in these delicious potato dumplings. Now, the potato dumplings were simply made with rice potatoes, a little bit of flour, egg, salt, pepper, nutmeg, and melted butter. So here, I'm going to get my dumplings in here. We're just going to get a lid on this. We're going to simmer these. These take about 8 minutes. They'll be done. We're going to take a little break, and then when we come back, I'm going to show you how you serve up this delicious beef stew with potato dumplings. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Let's Cook, where we have done some wonderful brown veal stock and also stew. Now, to make stew, it's real simple. You just need good stock, you need good meat. So this was a stew that we started during the show, and you can see that this is now, just now coming up to simmer, and we have to allow this to simmer and cook all the way through. Now, we have some stew here that already cooked through, and in the last segment, I made some potato dumplings. Now, as this stew is simmering, I need to take some of the liquid and just baste my dumplings. That's just going to prevent them from getting a skin, and they're going to be that much more delicious. And you just kind of become one with the stew, so to speak. Now, one thing I need to do, I need to taste the stew. Really needs it. Just a little bit of pepper here. Just a little bit more pepper in there. There we go. And then a pinch of salt. This is now good to go. Now, to serve this, I have a beautiful bowl here. Just going to take wonderful potato dumpling right here. Oh, then Dish up some of this delicious stew. Right around it this way. A little bit more stew in there. That really works for me. A little bit of parsley on there. You know, you have warm weather or cold weather food. Stew is one of them. Thanks for watching.